So if you find yourself under pressure, wrestling with resistance, or walking through intense spiritual tension, don't panic. Don't retreat. Recognize it for what it is: a sign, a signal that you are closer than you think, that heaven is moving, that the enemy is panicking, that something big is coming. Because no one attacks what isn't valuable. And the moment you realize your warfare is attached to your worth, you'll stop fearing the fight and start embracing it as part of the path to your promise. But the resistance you face is not greater than the power within you. Spiritual warfare is real, but so is spiritual authority. When you belong to God and are walking in His purpose, you are not left defenseless. You've been equipped with the Word, with prayer, with discernment, and with divine strength that does not come from you, it comes from Him. And in the heat of battle, when everything seems to rise against you, that's often when your faith is refined and your spiritual muscles are strengthened. God doesn't waste the warfare. He uses it to sharpen your focus, to deepen your dependency on Him, and to teach you how to fight not in your flesh, but in the Spirit. The warfare may come through fear, irrational fear that paralyzes you when you're about to make a move. It may come through confusion, making you question what you once knew with certainty. Or it may come through temptation, trying to pull you back into habits or environments that God already delivered you from. Sometimes it comes in the form of busyness, too many distractions pulling your focus, leaving you spiritually dry. And other times it comes through isolation, making you feel like no one understands, like you're fighting alone. But here's what's important to understand: resistance is often a confirmation, not a contradiction. It doesn't mean you're on the wrong path, it means you're on the right one. If there's no pressure, it may be a sign that you're not pressing into anything that threatens darkness. But the moment you begin to walk toward your calling with clarity and conviction, the enemy starts setting traps, not because you're weak, but because you're powerful. You are a threat to his agenda, and the very attack you're facing is proof of the assignment on your life. This resistance isn't always obvious. It can be subtle: an increase in discouraging thoughts, a sudden wave of doubt, confusion about your purpose, or a deep sense of fatigue that makes it hard to pray, plan, or even hope. It's not just life being difficult, it's a spiritual tension. Because when heaven is preparing to release something into your life, hell often gets nervous. The enemy knows when you're close to breakthrough. He senses when you're stepping into alignment with God's plan. And his tactic is simple: distract, delay, and discourage. If he can't stop God's plan, he'll try to make you give up before it manifests. When God is about to do something significant in your life, another undeniable sign is the sudden rise of resistance and spiritual warfare. It may come unexpectedly and intensify, just as you're beginning to feel hopeful, just when doors seem to be opening or clarity begins to form. The pressure increases. Strange distractions arise. You may feel mentally weary, emotionally drained, or spiritually foggy. People around you might begin acting differently. You may experience conflict in relationships that were once peaceful, or face opposition in places where you used to feel safe. It's as if everything starts pushing back against your progress. The testing of your character is not meant to break you. It's meant to build something eternal within you. Something that can't be shaken when the platform grows or when success arrives. Something that allows you to handle favor with humility and respond to opposition with grace. God refines what he intends to use greatly. And if you find yourself in a season where you're being stretched, where your motives are being challenged, and your inner life is being exposed, don't despise it. That's a sign you're being trusted with more. That's a sign he's preparing you not just to receive something big, but to carry it with wisdom, strength, and a heart that reflects him. These hidden tests refine you. They sharpen your discernment, stretch your endurance, and purify your motives until what you want is not just the blessing, but God himself. He's not looking for perfection, but for purity of heart. For someone who won't use the platform for their own glory. For someone who can be trusted to steward the gift with integrity and compassion. Sometimes the testing comes through delay. God withholds the very thing he promised to see if you will still walk with him even when it feels like he's silent. Other times it comes through comparison, watching others move ahead while you remain in the background. It's in these moments that your motives become clear. Do you want the blessing for affirmation, or do you want it because you've been called to serve? Do you want to be seen by people, or do you want to be faithful to God, even if he keeps you hidden a little longer? This is not punishment. It's preparation. Before God gives you more, he ensures that you are rooted enough to handle the weight of what's coming. Because success, opportunity, and favor, while they are blessings, can also be dangerous if your identity isn't firmly grounded in Him. He's not just interested in giving you the promise, He's interested in shaping the person who will carry it. And that means allowing moments that expose any selfish ambition, entitlement, impatience, or hidden pride that could destroy you if left unchecked. The testing of your character often comes when no one is watching. Will you be faithful when it seems no one notices? Will you stay committed when the rewards are not immediate? Will you treat people with kindness when there's nothing to gain? When God is preparing to entrust you with something big, a calling, a breakthrough, a new level of influence or provision, one of the most revealing signs is that your character and motives come under deep testing. It often happens quietly away from the spotlight. God begins to allow situations that don't just challenge your skills or patience, but touch the very core of who you are. You may find yourself misunderstood, overlooked, or placed in positions that require humility when pride would be easier. You may face decisions where your integrity is tested, not in grand ways, but in small daily choices that reveal where your heart truly stands. But rather than feeling overwhelmed, you begin to feel equipped, because God never opens your eyes without also strengthening your heart. So when you find yourself in a season where your spirit is more alert than usual, when you can feel the shift before it happens, when you sense God's nearness even in silence, when you can no longer ignore the nudges, the dreams, or the convictions, understand this: you are being prepared. Your spirit is responding to heaven's movement. And that increase in spiritual awareness is not random. It's a signal that God is near and that something greater is on the horizon. Sometimes this sensitivity makes you feel isolated. You're not trying to pull away from people, but you feel like you're being pulled into something deeper. That's part of the preparation. God often deepens your awareness so you'll be able to recognize the weight of the blessing when it comes, not just to receive it, but to carry it well. Because what He's preparing to release in your life may come with greater responsibility, greater visibility, or greater influence, and He's refining your spirit so you can handle it with maturity and discernment. Spiritual sensitivity is a gift, but it's also a responsibility. The closer you get to what God has for you, the more your spirit must stay aligned with Him. You'll start to recognize distractions more quickly. You'll be more aware of your surroundings, your choices, and the spiritual warfare that sometimes tries to block your progress. This heightened awareness is not always comfortable. It often comes with a sense of urgency or spiritual pressure. You begin to feel a holy dissatisfaction with surface-level living. You realize that things that once filled your time or attention now feel empty. Your spirit is no longer content with normal. You begin praying differently, listening more carefully, watching more closely. And while others may not see what you see or feel what you feel, you sense that something is shifting in the unseen realm, that heaven is moving on your behalf. You may notice yourself being more affected by spiritual conversations, scripture, sermons, or even the whisper of God in everyday moments. Things that once seemed routine now feel purposeful. Words that once sounded ordinary suddenly carry weight. You might walk into a room and feel the atmosphere shift. You might start discerning people's spirits, sensing what's unsaid, or recognizing the tension between your current season and what God is pulling you toward. This is not imagination, this is alignment. God is waking your spirit up, preparing you to recognize what He's doing before it fully manifests. Another powerful sign that God is preparing to release something significant in your life is a noticeable increase in your spiritual sensitivity. You begin to feel more attuned to things you might have overlooked before. Moments seem deeper, messages hit differently, and your awareness of God's presence becomes sharper. It's not that you suddenly become perfect or ultra-spiritual, but your spirit starts to tune into a different frequency. You find yourself craving more quiet time, more prayer, more clarity from above. The things of the world, distractions, noise, even entertainment, begin to lose their grip, and a hunger for truth and meaning starts rising within you. Peace in the middle of uncertainty is not weakness. It's not passivity. It's not denial. It is a fierce and quiet faith that says, even if I don't know what's next, I know who holds what's next. It is a settled heart in an unsettled world. And when you carry that kind of peace, even in your waiting season, even when nothing looks like it's moving, that's a sign. That's the evidence that heaven is near, that something is shifting, that God is already working on your behalf. There is a stillness that only comes from surrender. When you've done all you can, when you've prayed and planned and positioned yourself, and then you choose to release the rest to God, that's when His peace floods in. Not as a reward for having all the answers, but as a gift for trusting Him through the unknown. It's in that place of peace that you hear God more clearly. It's where your strength is renewed. It's where the enemy loses power over your thoughts. And it's often the last sign before the shift, because peace is the atmosphere of breakthrough. When God is preparing to do something big, He doesn't always give you a detailed roadmap, but He will often give you this inner assurance, a knowing that you're on the right path, even if that path feels unfamiliar. This peace can be difficult to explain to others. On the outside, it may look like you should be stressed, anxious, or overwhelmed. But something in you is at rest, not because things are easy, but because your trust is no longer in circumstances, your trust is in God. It's the kind of peace that lets you take one step at a time without fear. It allows you to wait without panic, to move without certainty, and to believe even when the outcome is hidden. It becomes a shield that protects your mind from spiraling and your heart from giving up. One of the most powerful and surprising signs that God is about to release something significant in your life is the presence of deep, unshakable peace, even when nothing around you makes sense. It's the kind of peace that doesn't come from a perfect situation or a clear plan. In fact, it often shows up right in the middle of uncertainty. You may not know what's next. You may not have all the answers. You may even be walking through a storm of confusion, delay, or disappointment. And yet something inside you feels still, calm, anchored. This peace doesn't come from logic or circumstance. It's not the result of everything going your way. It's a peace that comes from knowing in the deepest part of your spirit that God is in control even when you're not. It is the quiet confidence that you're being carried, that you're not walking alone, and that the chaos around you doesn't change the promise within you. There's something humbling and powerful about realizing that you're being positioned for something bigger than yourself, and God is placing the right people in your life to get you there. These are not just helpers, they are destiny accelerators. They push you forward, pull out the best in you, and sometimes challenge you to think beyond your current limits. And when you look back, you'll see how each encounter, each conversation, each moment of unexpected help was a thread in a larger tapestry, woven perfectly in alignment with God's plan for your life. So if you're starting to notice new people entering your life with purpose, or if help is coming from places you didn't ask for, pay attention. Don't dismiss it as chance. Be sensitive to the way God uses others to guide you. He often answers prayers through people. And when He is about to elevate you, He surrounds you with the support you didn't even know you needed. Help will come in ways that surprise you. Resources will show up right when you're about to give up. A word of encouragement will come just when your faith starts to falter. Provision will arrive from places you never considered. This is how God works when He's preparing to move. He doesn't always give you the full picture, but He sends what you need for the next step. And the help that comes is often a reminder that you are not alone in your journey, that heaven is backing you, that destiny is not a solo mission. Often these divine connections come when you least expect them and through people you wouldn't have chosen. God does not always use the familiar to usher in the extraordinary. He might use someone outside your circle, someone whose background is different from yours, someone you didn't even think was paying attention. And yet, they are placed in your life with precise timing, not just for your benefit, but often for mutual purpose. Divine connections are rarely one-sided. They are often two people whose paths converge to fulfill a greater assignment that benefits both and glorifies God. You may find yourself meeting someone who speaks into your life with clarity, as if they know what you've been wrestling with in silence. A mentor appears. A door opens through someone you barely knew before. A stranger says something that feels like a confirmation to a prayer you whispered days ago. These are not accidents. They are evidence that God is working behind the scenes, that His favor is surrounding you, guiding you, and connecting the pieces you cannot see. When God is preparing to do something big in your life, one of the most beautiful and undeniable signs is the arrival of divine connections and unexpected help. These are not random encounters or coincidences, they are orchestrated alignments. People begin to show up in your life at just the right time, bringing with them encouragement, wisdom, resources, or opportunities that speak directly to your need or to the vision God has placed in your heart. These connections don't have to be long-lasting or dramatic. Sometimes a single conversation can shift your perspective or open a door that leads you to your next assignment. It's human nature to try to pry those doors back open, to return to what felt safe, to recreate what once worked. But when God closes a door, no amount of striving will make it open again, not because He wants to hurt you, but because He loves you too much to let you settle. He knows the timing, the season, and the weight of your destiny. And sometimes the very thing we call a setback is the setup for a breakthrough we never saw coming. It's human nature to try to pry those doors back open, to return to what felt safe, to recreate what once worked. But when God closes a door, no amount of striving will make it open again, not because he wants to hurt you, but because he loves you too much to let you settle. He knows the timing, the season, and the weight of your destiny. And sometimes the very thing we call a setback is the setup for a breakthrough we never saw coming. A closed door can be one of the most painful blessings in disguise. It tests our trust. It forces us to reevaluate what we've been holding onto and whether we've been relying more on our plans than on his purpose. And in those moments of loss and confusion, we're invited to ask deeper questions, not why is this happening to me, but what is God trying to show me? Because even in endings, God is intentional. He never shuts one thing down without having something else in motion. But the next step often requires faith before it makes sense. Closed doors rarely come with explanations. Instead, they come with an invitation to trust. God's guidance isn't always about open doors. It's also about closed ones. He will allow certain things to end because he knows what's ahead and he sees what we can't. Where we see rejection, he sees protection. Where we feel loss, he's actually creating space. And where we mourn what we thought was our future, he's often shifting us into alignment with a greater one. We get attached to ideas, to people, to places. Sometimes those attachments are good. Sometimes they're limiting. God in his love steps in and removes what we wouldn't remove ourselves. Sometimes when God is about to do something big in your life, one of the clearest and yet most confusing signs is that doors begin to close off and doors you thought would stay open. Sometimes doors you prayed would open. And occasionally doors you were already walking through. It can feel sudden, unfair, and disorienting. An opportunity that once seemed promising slips away. A relationship that once felt solid begins to fall apart. A job you loved ends without warning. Plans that seemed sure are suddenly interrupted. In the moment, it's hard to see anything good in it. But often it's not punishment, it's redirection. People around you might not understand it. They might say you should be content or tell you to just settle down and be grateful. And yes, gratitude is vital, but don't confuse contentment with stagnation. God didn't create you to live a life of quiet dissatisfaction. That stirring you feel is not rebellion or ingratitude, it's your soul recognizing divine movement. When the Spirit of God begins to shift things in your life, it starts internally. He whispers in ways that don't always make sense to others, but make perfect sense to the person being called. And if you're sensing that now, that persistent, quiet nudge that you were made for more, that your time is coming, that change is near, don't ignore it. It's not in your imagination. It's preparation. God speaks through that stirring, not to confuse you, but to awaken you. You may find yourself craving deeper purpose, desiring new growth, or feeling like you're being pushed towards something unknown. And while that can feel confusing, it's actually confirmation that your spirit is aligning with heaven's timing. This kind of restlessness is often God's way of shaking us free from complacency. He never stirs the soul without a purpose. When he's about to launch you into a new level of calling, influence, or spiritual maturity, he first unsettles you where you are so that you stop clinging to what was and become open to what's next. This stirring doesn't always come with clear answers. It can feel like an ache you can't explain, like being called by name from a place you haven't yet seen. Sometimes it keeps you awake at night. Other times it leaves you unsatisfied with things that once fulfilled you. It's not a signal that something is wrong. It's a signal that something is shifting. God often uses this inner unease to pull us out of comfort zones, to prepare us for transition, and to awaken us to what he is about to release into our lives. You begin to see your current surroundings as temporary. Your heart starts to detach from things that once anchored you because God is making room for something new. So when life gets harder instead of easier, when you feel like you're doing everything right, but everything seems to go wrong, don't assume you're off course. You might be exactly where you need to be. The resistance is not the end, it's a signpost. Something is being birthed through your persistence. Your tears, your prayers, your faithfulness in secret, they are building pressure under the surface. And when it finally breaks, you'll realize the battle was not meant to break you, but to build you for what's coming. So when life gets harder instead of easier, when you feel like you're doing everything right, but everything seems to go wrong, don't assume you're off course. You might be exactly where you need to be. The resistance is not the end, it's a signpost. Something is being birthed through your persistence. Your tears, your prayers, your faithfulness in secret, they are building pressure under the surface. And when it finally breaks, you'll realize the battle was not meant to break you, but to build you for what's coming. The enemy intensifies the attack not because you're weak, but because you're close to something that will bring impact, transformation, or freedom. Think about the lives of people in Scripture. Before Joseph became second in command in Egypt, he was betrayed, enslaved, and imprisoned. Before David was crowned king, he spent years fleeing for his life. Even Jesus, before stepping fully into his public ministry, was led into the wilderness to be tested. Each of them experienced intense challenges before stepping into something greater, and the same is true for us. Before every breakthrough comes a battle. Before every elevation comes pressure. These aren't ordinary hardships, they're often specific, persistent, and strangely timed. They don't just attack your outer world, they press against your mind, your peace, your faith. But here's what's important to remember. God allows this shaking not to destroy you, but to strengthen what needs to be unshakable within you. He uses discomfort to bring growth. He uses struggle to purify your motives. Sometimes he even allows chaos to clear the space for what's coming. One of the clearest signs that God is preparing to do something significant in your life is the sudden onset of unusual, often intense challenges. These challenges may come out of nowhere, shaking your confidence, testing your patience, and making you question whether you've missed the mark. Life, which seemed stable, may begin to feel uncertain. Relationships you once depended on might become strained or fall away. Plans you carefully laid out may begin to unravel. It's in these moments that many people feel tempted to give up or turn back. But what's really happening is deeper than what the eye can see.